June 1945. The rain had stopped an hour earlier, but the Okinawa wind still carried the smell of soaked earth, ash, and something older like a memory burned into the island itself. Corporal Daniel Hayes walked at the front of the patrol line, boots sinking into the muddy path that cut through what remained of a small fishing village. Roofs caved in, walls broken open. Smoke curled lazily from places where fires had died on their own. Nothing moved except the wind. "Clear on the left," Private Adams whispered. Daniel nodded, raising his hand for the squad to spread out. They had been sweeping abandoned structures all morning, mostly finding nothing: empty rooms, shattered crates, fishermen's tools left behind in a hurry. But as they approached a long wooden barn at the edge of the village, Daniel slowed. He heard something. Not footsteps, not movement. A breath. A quick, short, trembling breath. He held his fist up, and the squad froze instantly. "Hayes?" Sergeant Boone murmured behind him. Daniel tilted his head, listening again. Another breath, closer this time. Human. Weak. "In there," Daniel whispered, pointing to the barn. They moved carefully, weapons raised. The barn door hung crooked, one hinge broken. Daniel pushed it open a few inches. The smell hit first wet straw, splintered wood, old dung, and smoke. Light spilled in through the slats of the roof, striping the floor in pale gold. Then Daniel saw her. A young Japanese woman lay on the straw near the center of the barn. Her dark hair stuck to her face, soaked with sweat or rain he couldn't tell. Her body trembled visibly. Her legs were spread at an unnatural angle, knees shaking, toes digging into the straw as if she were trying desperately not to move. Her eyes flew open when she heard the door. Fear flooded them, raw, immediate, animal fear. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, palm open to show he wasn't a threat. "It's okay," he said softly. "We're not here to hurt you." But the woman shook her head, gasping for breath. Her fingers clawed at the straw. Then she said it. Words so fragile and broken they barely made it across the room. "Don't touch me," her voice cracked. I can't close my legs." The squad behind Daniel stiffened. Adams blinked rapidly. Boone muttered something under his breath. Daniel felt a sharp jolt of confusion followed immediately by unease. Something was wrong. Not the way it looked. Not what anyone might think at first glance. He stepped forward, lowering himself to one knee beside her. "It's all right," he repeated, gentler. "Just tell me where you're hurt." Her eyes filled with tears. Shame and terror warred in her expression. "I can't move," she whispered. "If I move, I die." Her voice trembled in a way Daniel had only heard on battlefields. He scanned her legs, the straw around them, the angle of her hips. Sevens. And then he saw the faint glint of something metallic beneath the straw. A thin wire, pulled tight, right between her legs. Daniel's breath caught. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an injury. This was a trap. And even the smallest movement could kill her. For a moment, Daniel didn't breathe. The thin wire glimmered only when a beam of sunlight slipped through the gaps in the roof. Otherwise, it blended into the dirt and straw almost invisible. Exactly how it was meant to be. Behind him, Sergeant Boone whispered, "What is it?" Daniel lifted a finger to silence him. He leaned closer to the young woman, moving slowly, making sure she could see every motion. She flinched anyway, throat tightening with panic. "It's okay," Daniel murmured. "I'm not touching you. I just need to look." Her lips parted, trembling. Sweat beaded along her brow and rolled down her temples. Daniel could practically feel the fear radiating from her. The light shifted again, another glint. No doubt now. A taut tripwire, anchored somewhere beneath the straw. He swept his gaze around the barn without lifting his head. The building was old, thick beams, rusted nails, parts of the roof caved in. Tools lay scattered. Ropes, buckets, a broken plow. Everything looked normal, but that only increased his suspicion. Japanese soldiers often hid traps in the most ordinary places. "Boone," Daniel whispered without turning. "Get Miles." A moment later, Private Miles, small, wiry, the squad's combat engineer, crouched beside him. "What's the sit?" He froze mid-sentence, eyes narrowing. "Damn. That's a Type 93 setup if I've ever seen one." "Don't say words like damn or blast around her," Daniel muttered. Miles grimaced. "Right. Sorry." The woman breathed in quick, painful bursts. She didn't understand their English, but she understood tone. She knew she was in danger, more danger than before. Daniel placed his hand gently in the air near her shoulder, not touching, just letting her see his steadiness. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She blinked, tears trembling at the edges. Aiko." "Aiko," Daniel repeated, quietly, slowly. "My name is Daniel. I'm going to help you. But you have to stay completely still. Don't try to close your legs. Don't try to pull away. Just breathe." Aiko swallowed and nodded once, tiny, terrified. Daniel tapped Miles on the arm. "Talk to me." Miles bent low, brushing more straw aside with 2 fingers slowly, carefully. "I can't see the grenade yet," he whispered. "But the tension is real." Wires pulled toward her right foot. If she moved when she panicked, it might already be at the hair trigger point. Behind them, Adams muttered shakily, "She's just lying there." "Waiting to die?" Daniel turned his head, his expression enough to silence the boy. He refocused on Aiko. Her chest rose and fell too fast. Her arms were rigid beside her, hands buried in straw, nails digging so deep the skin around them reddened. Her knees quivered, not moving sideways, but trembling up and down from the strain of holding them open. "Aiko," Daniel said softly, "try to look at me." Her eyes wide, dark, and exhausted lifted to his. "Good. Stay with me. Only me. Let Miles worry about the wire." Aiko's breath shuddered again. I don't want to die like this." Daniel felt something twist painfully inside him. He shook his head. "You're not dying today," he said. "Not on my watch." Miles exhaled through his teeth. "I need more light." Boone angled his flashlight but kept his distance. The beam revealed just enough. The curve of a metal pin buried under straw, and a small indentation where the grenade body likely rested. "Yep," Miles whispered. "Classic Japanese pull grenade trap. If she shifts those legs even half an inch, kaboom." Aiko squeezed her eyes shut. Daniel leaned closer, voice steady. "Then we'll make damn sure you don't move. Not a millimeter. Promise." Daniel could tell Aiko was close to breaking. Her breathing wasn't just fast, it was shallow, the kind of breath a person takes when their body has already accepted death, but their mind is still fighting to stay alive. Her fingers twitched involuntarily, scraping faint lines into the straw. Even that tiny movement made Miles hiss through his teeth. "Tell her to stop moving her hands," he whispered urgently. Daniel nodded. "Aiko, your hands. Keep them still. Keep them flat." She swallowed hard, tears clinging to her lashes. "I'm trying." "You're doing good," Daniel said. His voice stayed calm, soft as if speaking louder might shake the air and set off the grenade. "Just breathe with me." She tried, but every breath hitched. Her shoulders shook. The terror in her eyes wasn't only fear of death, it was something deeper, heavier, built from days or weeks of being hunted or hiding alone in places like this. Daniel lowered his voice even further. "Aiko, listen. We don't think you're an enemy. We're not here to hurt you. Aiko's lips parted, but no words came out. Her gaze flickered to each soldier standing in the barn. Boone, Miles, Adams, and her panic sharpened. She had no idea who to trust. She was surrounded by men in uniforms she'd been told all her life to fear. Daniel saw her chest tighten. "Look at me," he said gently. "Only me." Her eyes returned to his, wide and shimmering. "You didn't set this trap," Daniel said. "I know that. And you don't deserve to die here because someone else did." Aiko's chin quivered. Her voice trembled like a thin thread of glass. "I thought they left me. I came for water. I stepped wrong. I felt the pull. Then I couldn't close my legs anymore." Her face scrunched with shame, not pain. "I was afraid. If soldiers found me like this, they would think—" She couldn't finish the sentence. But Daniel understood anyway. He sat back on his heel, jaw tightening. He hated that she even had to think that. Hated that this was what war did, twisting every human moment into suspicion, humiliation, fear. "Aiko," he said softly, "no one here thinks anything bad about you. Not one of us." Behind him, Adams whispered, "We don't. We really don't." Aiko let out a tiny broken sound halfway between a breath and a sob. Her tears fell freely now. Not loud, not frantic. Just quiet, steady grief. The kind that comes from holding fear in your chest too long. Miles leaned closer to Daniel. Her breathing's making her legs shake. If she keeps panicking, that wire could jump. "I know," Daniel murmured. He wiped a streak of sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist. The barn was hot, thick with the smell of old wood, damp straw, and Aiko's fear. Outside, the wind rattled the loose pane on the barn wall, and Aiko jolted again. Daniel placed his hand gently a few inches above her knee, not touching her, just letting his presence steady her. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe for now. Stay with me." Her tears slowed. Her breaths grew steadier, not calm, but controlled enough that her legs stopped trembling. And for the first time since they entered the barn, Daniel believed she might actually survive this. Miles lowered himself until his cheek was almost touching the straw. He didn't dare move air too fast around the wire. Daniel stayed beside Aiko, angled so she could see his face, not the fear on everyone else's. "Talk to me," Daniel whispered. Miles brushed another thin layer of straw away with 2 fingers. Slow. Controlled. Careful enough that each motion looked like it happened underwater. "Yep," he murmured, voice barely audible. "Just as I thought." He pointed with his chin, not his hand, refusing to risk disturbing the air near the wire. Japanese Type 93 pull grenade setup. They probably rigged it when the garrison pulled out. Aiko's brows tightened. She didn't understand the English words, but she understood the way they said them, the weight, the dread, the precision. Miles continued, "There's a single wire. Tensioned. Runs straight under her right foot. If she tries to close her legs, or even shifts a few centimeters, the pin pulls." Daniel kept his voice steady. "Can you see the grenade?" "Not fully." Miles pushed a bit more straw aside, exposing a sliver of steel. "But I see the top. It's wedged inside a crack in the floorboard, rigged with a primitive wooden brace. Not very clever, but effective enough." Boone exhaled slowly. "How sensitive?" Miles didn't look away from the device. "Hair trigger. They probably set it for retreat sabotage. You step in the wrong place. Boom. You panic and flinch, boom. You breathe too hard and shift." He cut himself off when he saw Aiko's eyes widen. Daniel shot him a warning look. Miles swallowed. "Sorry. Just being honest." Aiko sucked in a shaky breath, knees quivering again. Daniel leaned closer. "Aiko, listen to me. You're doing everything right. Don't let his words scare you. We've handled traps like this before. She stared at him, voice barely a whisper. It hurts. Daniel nodded. I know. Her thighs had been locked open for so long that the muscles were past burning. They were approaching numbness, the kind that precedes involuntary spasms. Daniel saw it. Miles saw it. Boone saw it. Miles whispered, "We don't have much time before her legs start shaking uncontrollably. Once that happens." He didn't need to finish. Daniel nodded. So, what's the approach? Miles took a long breath, eyes fixed on the wire. I need to clamp the wire first to stop it from pulling tighter. Then I need to stabilize it. Then we can cut. He paused. Problem is, I can't stabilize it if her legs shake. Even a tiny jerk could pull the pin. Daniel glanced at Aiko again. Her face was pale. Sweat dripped from her chin onto the straw. Her breathing hitched with each inhale, a sign her strength was fading. Okay, Daniel said quietly. Then we make sure she doesn't move. Miles nodded slowly, like a man preparing for surgery without tools. Then let's begin. Miles eased backward, keeping his body low as he prepared his tools. Boone angled his flashlight to avoid glare. Adams stood near the door, hands shaking so badly he had to grip his rifle to hide it. Daniel turned his focus back to Aiko. She was slipping. Not physically yet, but mentally. Her eyes drifted downward, then off to the side, unfocused, as if she was spiraling into a place where fear drowned out everything else. Aiko, Daniel whispered. Stay with me. Her breath hitched. She blinked hard, then again, but her gaze still trembled. He needed to ground her. Give her something real to hold on to, something that wasn't terror. Aiko. Do you have family? He asked softly. For a moment, she didn't seem to hear him. Then her lip trembled. Her voice came out like a cracked whisper. My brother. Daniel leaned closer. Your brother? Her chin lowered slightly, just enough for her hair to fall across her cheek. He died. Naha. Bombing. A tear slid off her jawline and darkened the straw beneath her ear. Daniel swallowed. Losing family in war wasn't something he needed translated. He understood that pain in any language. Then he noticed her right wrist. A small woven bracelet, crude, tattered, made from braided plant fibers, clung to her skin. It looked handmade, not military issue. Old, faded, but cherished. Daniel lowered his voice even more. Did he give you that? Aiko hesitated. Then nodded. She lifted her trembling wrist a few inches, the only part of her body she dared to move, before letting it fall gently back into the straw. He made it for me, she whispered. So I would not be alone. Daniel exhaled slowly, something tight in his chest loosening. War turned people into uniforms, into languages, into sides. But this crude bracelet made by a brother was the kind of detail that ripped down every wall between strangers. He's with you now, Daniel said softly. Right here. Aiko's throat tightened. Her tears came faster, but quieter. I don't want him to see me like this, she whispered, voice cracking. If I die like... She trailed off, unable to say the rest. Daniel shook his head immediately. Hey, look at me. Her eyes lifted, wet and wide. You're not dying today, he said. Not here, not in this barn, and not like this. I promise you. The vow hung in the air, heavy, solid, unbreakable. Behind him, Miles murmured, Hayes. I'm ready. Daniel nodded but kept his attention on Aiko a moment longer. You have something to live for, he whispered. Your brother wanted you to survive. Let us help you do that. Her breathing steadied, not calm, but anchored. She nodded once, tiny but real. Good, Daniel murmured. Hold on to him. Hold on to that bracelet. And hold still for me. Aiko closed her eyes and mouthed a silent word, maybe a prayer, maybe her brother's name, and when she opened them again, there was something new there. Sevens, not courage. Not yet. But something like trust. Miles wiped his palms on his trousers and leaned in. All right, he whispered. Let's save her. Miles adjusted his position, bracing his elbows against the straw-covered floor as carefully as someone lowering their weight onto thin glass. Daniel shifted slightly to keep Aiko's line of sight clear. Her breathing steadied just enough for Miles to begin, but then footsteps creaked behind them. Heavy ones. Private Miller. Daniel didn't have to turn to know the expression on the man's face. He could feel the tension rolling off him like heat from a furnace. Sir, Miller muttered, voice low but sharp. We shouldn't be doing this. Boone shot him a warning glance. Not now. But Miller stepped closer anyway, fingers tightening on the strap of his rifle. No, I mean it, he said. This is a damn fool risk. She's Japanese. Could be a scout. Could have set this thing on purpose. Aiko flinched at his tone, misunderstanding the words, but not the hostility. Her legs trembled again, a ripple of fear. Daniel's voice hardened. Miller, back up. But Miller didn't move. He gestured at her with a jerk of his chin. Sir, she's positioned like bait. They used women for distractions before. You know that. We lose one man to save her, and it's pointless. Aiko's eyes widened. She didn't know the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Her breath grew jagged again. The muscles of her thighs quivered dangerously. Daniel whispered sharply, Aiko, don't listen to him. Look at me. Her eyes darted to his instantly. Miles hissed, Hayes, get him out of here. I'm trying to steady a live grenade, and he's scaring the hell out of the tripwire. Miller didn't seem to care. He took another step, jaw rigid. With all due respect, sir. My brother died fighting Japanese soldiers last month. Died choking on his own blood outside Kakuzu Ridge. And now we're risking 6 men for one of them. The barn fell silent. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Daniel slowly rose to one knee, careful not to shake the floorboards, and turned to face Miller fully. I'm sorry about your brother, he said quietly. Truly sorry. But this woman didn't kill him. She's still the enemy. Daniel's voice turned firm, not loud, but solid. She's a human being caught in a trap. And I'm not letting her die tied to a damn wire while we stand here debating her worth. Miller's jaw clenched. Sir, respect. No, Daniel cut in. Listen. He pointed to Aiko, not touching her, just enough for Miller to see her for what she was. She's dehydrated. She's terrified. She hasn't eaten in days. She's not holding a weapon. She's not a threat. If we walk out of here, the grenade kills her. He paused. And you'll have to live with that. Aiko stared at Daniel's face, confused but sensing he was defending her. Tears welled again, this time not only from fear but something like disbelief. Miller's eyes flickered. For a moment, something in him cracked the part of him that remembered what it was like to see a scared civilian for the first time before war hardened him. He stepped back, jaw loosening. Fine. But this is on you, Hayes. Daniel nodded once. Good. Then stay quiet and stay out of Miles's light. Miller exhaled through his nose and moved toward the barn wall, leaning his rifle against his chest, eyes down. Aiko's gaze lingered on Daniel. He lowered himself beside her again. You're safe, he whispered. I'm here. She nodded weakly, a tear slipping down her cheek, but now her legs had stopped shaking. Just enough for Miles to work. Miles crawled forward another inch, placing himself directly beside Aiko's right leg, the side where the wire disappeared beneath the straw. His movements were so controlled that each shift of his weight looked like a slow sigh. Daniel stayed at Aiko's head, keeping his body between her and the rest of the barn so she wouldn't feel surrounded. He didn't touch her, but his presence was close enough for her to draw strength from it. Aiko's breathing trembled again. "Easy," Daniel whispered. "Just breathe with me. In and out." She tried, but every inhale made her abdomen tighten, which in turn made her legs tremble. Not enough to move sideways, but enough to scare everyone watching. Miles glanced at Daniel. "We need her steady. Even minor tremors affect the wire." Daniel leaned down, his face level with hers. "Aiko, listen to me." Her eyes fluttered open. "You're doing so well," he said softly. "But I need you to match my breathing now. Can you do that?" She hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. Daniel inhaled slowly, a deep, calm breath. Aiko followed. Her chest rose shakily. Then he exhaled, long and steady. Aiko exhaled too, though hers ended with a soft sob. "It's all right," Daniel said. "Keep going." That rhythm steadied her legs not perfectly, but enough that Miles could begin. The engineer opened a small pouch and pulled out a metal clamp, gently pushing straw aside with the back of his knuckles. "I'm going to place the clamp just ahead of the tension point," Miles murmured. "Right where the wire meets the floorboard." Daniel nodded once. "Aiko, don't look down. Just keep your eyes on me." She did. Her gaze locked onto his, desperate and terrified, but trusting. Miles moved with the precision of a surgeon. He followed the wire's curve under her leg, careful not to brush against her skin. The slightest contact could shift her weight, and that shift could trigger the pin. "Wire's tight," he whispered. "Like dangerously tight." She must have hit it just enough to arm it but not fire it. Aiko whimpered softly. Daniel shook his head gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. This wasn't your fault." Her voice cracked. I thought if I stayed very still, maybe someone would come." Daniel swallowed. "Someone did." Miles froze mid-motion. "Hold that breath. Aiko, don't move. I'm placing the clamp." Daniel kept whispering soothing words she didn't quite understand, but the tone carried everything she needed. After what felt like a full minute, Miles murmured, "Clamp is almost locked." Aiko's legs tensed for a split second, a reflex from pain. Miles stiffened. "Haze." Daniel immediately whispered, sharper but gentle, "Aiko, stay with me. Look at me. You're safe." She forced her gaze back to his, trembling tears collecting at the corners of her eyes. Miles took advantage of the stillness and eased the clamp fully into place. "Clamp secured," he whispered. "Wires stabilized. For now." Daniel exhaled in relief quietly, so she wouldn't notice how close they'd come to disaster. But the engineer wasn't finished. "Next step's the hard part," Miles said. "I need to expose the grenade. Fully. And that means brushing aside everything under her right leg." Daniel understood immediately. Aiko was at her limit. Her muscles were starting to falter. Her breath was losing rhythm. "All right," Daniel whispered, lowering himself beside her. "We'll get you through the next part." He didn't touch her yet, but he knew the moment was coming. The moment where not touching her would no longer be an option. Miles began clearing the straw in slow circles around the tripwire, working like a man carving a sculpture made of explosives. The barn was quiet, except for the faint rustle of straw and Aiko's tight, trembling breaths. But Daniel felt something else creeping in. A tension he knew too well. A pressure behind his ribs, behind his eyes, behind the part of his brain that stored memories he didn't want. The sight of a wire stretched taut like that. A body frozen in fear. the smell of dust and metal. It dragged him back in time. Guadalcanal. Rain hammering the jungle canopy, screaming somewhere in the dark, and a different trap, a different wire, a different man lying on the ground. Daniel blinked hard once, twice, but the barn flickered away and another place took its place. It was 1942. He was younger, greener, shaking just like Iko was now. His squad leader, Corporal Reeves, had been the one caught. They'd been clearing a narrow trail when Reeves stepped on something that clicked beneath his boot. He froze. "Boys, I think I'm on a trigger plate." Daniel dropped to his knees without thinking, heart pounding like artillery. "Don't move," he whispered the same way he whispered to Iko now. Reeves tried to smile, but his lips trembled. "I ain't planning to." Miles wasn't there back then. No engineer, no expert. Just Daniel and two terrified privates trying to see the shape of the bomb in the mud while bullets cracked in the distance. Daniel remembered brushing aside dirt, revealing the corner of a metal casing. The earth was shaking. Reeves's legs were shaking. Daniel's hands were shaking. "Hayes," Reeves whispered, "tell my wife." "Shut up," Daniel snapped. "You're not dying today." But the jungle didn't care about promises. The plate shifted. Just a fraction. Enough. Daniel saw a flash, heard a crack, and the world spun into fire. Reeves disappeared in the explosion, thrown into the air, torn apart before Daniel could even shout his name. When Daniel woke, his ears ringing, his hands shaking uncontrollably, all he could see was the crater where Reeves had been. A man he respected. A friend. Gone in an instant because Daniel hadn't been fast enough, because he hadn't known enough, because fear made the man's legs shake at the wrong time. The barn came back into focus with a jolt. Iko's legs were trembling in the exact same desperate way Reeves's had, not violently, but in tiny involuntary spasms caused by exhaustion and terror. Daniel inhaled sharply. Not again. Not this time. Not on his watch. Miles looked up at him. "You good, Hayes? You spaced out for a second." Daniel blinked away the last shards of memory. "I'm fine." He wasn't, but Iko didn't need to know that. He leaned down so she could hear only him. "Iko, I've seen what fear does to people caught in traps." Her lips trembled. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," he whispered. "Just stay with me. I won't let what happened before happen again. Not to you." Her eyes widened, not in fear this time, but in something softer. Trust. Recognition. Something human connecting across two worlds broken by war. Miles cleared his throat. "Exposing the grenade now. Things are about to get delicate." Daniel positioned himself closer, still not touching her, but one breath away. Preparing. Because the moment he'd been dreading. Sevens. The moment where he'd have to hold her still. Sevens was coming fast. Miles had cleared just enough straw to reveal the top curve of the grenade. It sat nestled between two cracked floorboards, the pin threaded through the tripwire that ran beneath Iko's right thigh. The entire setup looked ancient, crude, yet terrifyingly effective. "All right," Miles whispered. "I'm going to expose the pin next. That's the part that'll kill us if she moves." Iko's face tightened. Even without knowing English, she understood the tone. Danger. Daniel breathed slowly, deliberately, knowing she was watching him to anchor her own fear. But her muscles were giving out. He saw it, the tiny, rhythmic flutter under her skin. Thigh muscles that had been forced open far too long. Calves trembling. Breathing no longer sinking. "Iko," Daniel whispered. "Look at me. Just me." Her eyes lifted, watery and unfocused. I can't hold any more." "Yes, you can," he said gently. You've held this long. Hold a little more for me. She tried. God, she tried. But her legs were past exhaustion, past pain. They were entering the stage of involuntary microspasms, and that was when it happened. A loud crack sounded above them. A single dried plank in the roof gave out, snapping with a sharp pop as the wind pushed it sideways. A shard of wood fell, smacking the straw inches from Aiko's foot. The sound was sudden, sharp, brutal. Aiko jolted. Her thighs twitched, just a reflex, just half an inch. Sevens, but the wire trembled. Miles froze. Hayes! Her leg! Daniel moved instantly. There was no hesitation, no gap between instinct and action. He lunged forward and grabbed Aiko's thighs with both hands, pressing them firmly, not painfully, but with the absolute force needed to keep them from moving. Aiko gasped, eyes wide with shock. It's okay, Daniel whispered urgently. It's okay, I've got you. Don't move. I'm holding you. You're safe. Her chest heaved, her breath breaking. I didn't. I know. His voice was soft but trembling with adrenaline. You didn't do anything wrong. Miles' voice cut in, low and terrified. Hayes. I almost lost the wire. Another millimeter, and we'd be gone. Sevens. Daniel didn't look away from Aiko. I'm sorry for touching you without warning. I had to. I'm sorry. Her lip quivered. Then slowly she nodded. Not in fear. In understanding. The human kind. Her breathing eased slightly as she realized his hands were not violating, not aggressive. They were steady, protective, anchoring her body where her muscles could not. Daniel kept whispering to her, tightening his grip every time he felt the slightest tremor. You're doing great. Stay with me. I'm not letting anything happen to you. Miles swallowed hard. Okay. While you hold her, I'm going to reset the clamp tension. But Hayes, she cannot twitch again, not even a little. You need to hold those legs steady no matter what. I will, Daniel said. And he meant it. Aiko shut her eyes, tears slipping down the sides of her temples. But her legs, held firmly under Daniel's hands, stayed absolutely still. Her trust in him had become a lifeline. A literal one. Miles adjusted the clamp carefully. Tension stabilized again. Daniel exhaled. Aiko exhaled. But neither relaxed. Because everyone in the barn knew. Sevens. The worst part was yet to come. The cutting. The barn felt smaller now. Daniel's hands stayed locked around Aiko's thighs, holding them steady against the creeping tremors of exhaustion. Miles hovered at her right side like a surgeon preparing for a heart transplant. Boone watched the entrance, jaw clenched, sweat beading on his brow. Outside, the wind moaned through the broken village. Inside, no one breathed too deeply. Then, a soft sound broke through the silence. Not metal, not wood, not wind. A small, shaky sob. Daniel turned his head slightly. Adams, the youngest in the squad, barely 19, freckles still visible under the dirt, was standing near the door with his helmet held tight against his chest. His shoulders trembled. Another choking sob escaped him, louder this time. Boone hissed, Adams, get a grip. But the boy couldn't. He wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, but tears kept spilling anyway, dripping down his chin, leaving streaks in the dust on his cheeks. I'm sorry, Adams whispered hoarsely. I'm trying, Sarge. I really am. But I can't watch her die. Aiko's eyes flicked toward him, confused but startled. She didn't know English, but sorrow is a universal language. Her breath hitched. Daniel kept his hands firmly on her legs, but tilted his head toward the boy. Adams, he said quietly, step outside if you need to. But Adams shook his head violently. No. I don't want to leave her alone. He swallowed, voice breaking. She's scared. She's crying. And she's the enemy, but she looks like my sister. He choked again. I don't want her to die like that. Not while I'm standing here doing nothing. The barn fell into a heavy quiet. Daniel felt Aiko's thighs tense beneath his palms, not from fear this time, but from something else. Recognition. Humanity reflected. Miles muttered under his breath. Kid's gonna make me cry if he keeps that up. Aiko looked from Daniel to Adams, then back to Daniel again. Her voice came out fragile, thread thin. He is sad? For me? Daniel nodded gently. Yes. Aiko blinked, stunned. She had expected fear, hostility, disgust, anything but this. Adams wiped his eyes again, voice shaking. I don't even know her name. Hayes. And I feel like I'm watching my own family on that floor. Daniel kept his hands steady, but his voice softened. Her name is Aiko. Adams froze, then whispered it softly like something sacred. Aiko. Aiko's lips parted. A tear rolled over the bridge of her nose. Daniel leaned closer to her ear, voice barely a breath. You see, you're not alone in here. Not anymore. Her eyes glistened. Her breathing steadied, trembling, yes, but no longer spiraling. Adams forced himself to stand straighter. I won't cry again, Sarge. I'm staying right here. I want her to hear me when she makes it out. Daniel turned back to Aiko. Hear that? He whispered. They want you to live. Aiko let out a soft, broken exhale, almost a sob, almost a prayer. Miles cleared his throat. Hayes. I'm ready to expose the pin fully. Hold her tight. Daniel's hands tightened on her legs. Aiko squeezed her eyes shut, breath shaking but no longer alone, no longer abandoned, no longer a nameless enemy. The boy at the door had given her something no grenade could take away. A reason to survive. Miles exhaled once, long and steady, as if emptying every ounce of fear from his body before the next step. Daniel could feel Aiko's thighs trembling under his palms, her muscles exhausted, her body pushed beyond anything human should endure. It's time, Miles whispered. Daniel leaned closer to Aiko's ear. Aiko. I'm going to hold you still. Very still. Don't be afraid. I'm right here. She swallowed hard, tears slipping into her hairline. Oh, okay. Her voice was barely a sound, a breath shaped into a word. Daniel tightened his grip around the center of her thighs, pinning them firmly but gently against the straw-covered floor. His thumbs pressed into the outer muscles, stabilizing them, his forearms locked against her skin like braces. Aiko gasped at the sudden contact, but when she opened her eyes and saw Daniel's face, her panic softened. You're safe, he whispered. Stay with me. Miles positioned himself on his elbows again, lowering his face near the grenade. Boone angled the flashlight, careful not to cast shadows. All right. Miles breathed. Wires clamped. Tension stable. Now I need to free the pin from the notch. Daniel nodded. Aiko, breathe. Steady. In. And out. She followed him as best she could. Her exhale trembled, but her legs didn't. Miles brushed aside the last layer of straw and dirt. And there it was. The pin. A thin metal rod wrapped around the tripwire, barely threaded through the top of the grenade. The slightest movement from any direction, up, down, backward, forward, would pull it free. Adams whispered from the door, Holy God. Miles lifted a small cutting tool, the blades so delicate they looked like they belonged in a jeweler's hands. I'm going to cut just above the clamp, he murmured. Once I make the cut, the wire loses tension and falls flat. But before that happens, There'll be about 2 seconds where the pin is loose and the grenade can go off if anything moves. Daniel tightened his grip on Aiko. Her back arched slightly with fear, but he held her firmly, grounding her. "You're okay," he said quickly. "I won't let you move. I won't let go." Her breath hitched, then steadied again as she focused on the warmth of his hands, on the steadiness of his voice, on the fact that he had already saved her once and would again. Miles positioned the cutter on the wire. "Everyone hold your breath," he whispered. Boone held his. Adams covered his mouth. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Aiko squeezed her eyes shut and murmured something in Japanese, maybe a prayer, maybe her brother's name. Daniel pressed down a little harder, pinning her legs completely still. "I've got you," he whispered. "Stay with me, Aiko. You're not dying today." Miles closed the cutter. The barn fell silent. And then snip. A tiny metallic sound. Barely audible. Barely real. The wire sprang free, snapping harmlessly toward the floor. The pin loosened, wobbled, but did not pull. No explosion. No fire. No shockwave. No death. Aiko let out a sound, half sob, half gasp, and collapsed backward into the straw, her entire body shaking with relief. Daniel's hands remained firmly on her thighs another full second, just to be sure. Then, slowly, carefully, he loosened his grip. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're okay." Miles slumped back on his heels, wiping sweat off his brow. Boone finally breathed. Adams sobbed again, but this time with relief. The grenade sat silent, harmless. And Aiko Fujimoto, who had been one tremor away from death, was alive, because a handful of strangers refused to let her die. The silence after the cut was almost painful. No one moved at first. Not Daniel, not Miles, not Aiko. It was as if the barn itself was waiting to make sure the world was still intact. Then Daniel exhaled. A long, controlled breath. "It's done," he whispered. Aiko's whole body sagged into the straw. Her legs, freed from the wire, trembled violently, not from danger now, but from the sudden release of terror and muscle strain. Her knees twitched inward as instinct fought the hours of forced position. But she couldn't close them. Her muscles refused. Her body was trapped in the ghost of the position even after the wire was gone. Daniel saw it in an instant, saw the shame flicker across her face as she tried to pull her knees together and failed. Her breath hitched, panic rising again. No, don't panic," he said quickly. "It's just your muscles. They've locked up. They'll relax soon." Aiko shook her head in tiny, broken movements. I can't. I can't." Her voice fell apart. Daniel placed one steadying hand on her shoulder, the first touch that wasn't about life or death, but about reassurance. "It's not your fault," he whispered. "Your body's been fighting too long. Give it time." Her lower lip quivered. Tears pooled in her ears as she lay back, chest rising and falling unevenly. Miles gently removed the grenade and placed it inside a sandbag. "Device is safe," he said quietly. "We're clear." Boone finally lowered his rifle and wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Let's get her out of here." But when Daniel slid one arm beneath Aiko's back and the other under her knees, she gasped, not in pain, but in fear. No, please. My legs." Daniel paused immediately. He adjusted his grip, shifting so her legs stayed exactly as they were, supported without forcing them closed. "It's okay," he murmured. "I won't move them. I promise." She stared up at him, breath shallow, but she slowly nodded. Daniel lifted her carefully, not like a soldier carrying a casualty, but like a man protecting something fragile, something breakable, something that deserved gentleness. Her legs remained slightly open, suspended in the same trembling angle, muscles too exhausted to obey her mind's commands. but Daniel carried her as if that position were the most natural thing in the world. No judgment, no hesitation, just care. As he stood, Aiko's head fell against his chest. She wasn't unconscious, just drained beyond anything her body could handle. Her fingers curled into his uniform, gripping a fold of the fabric like a lifeline. Adams followed close behind, helmet pressed to his chest. His eyes were red, but he managed a shaky smile when Aiko glanced weakly in his direction. "We got you," he whispered. "You're okay now. You're okay." Miller leaned against the barn doorway, staring at the scene. His expression had changed. The hard lines of resentment softened, not gone, but cracked open by the helplessness he had witnessed. Daniel carried Aiko out into the gray Okinawa light. A gentle breeze touched her face, and for the first time, she inhaled air that didn't taste like fear. But her legs remained frozen in that trembling, half-open posture, a reminder of how close she had come to death and how long she had held herself together. Daniel held her a little tighter. "You're safe," he whispered again, as much for himself as for her. The medical tent sat at the edge of the American perimeter, canvas walls trembling in the late afternoon wind. Daniel carried Aiko through the flap as gently as if a single rough movement could break her. Inside, lantern light flickered over rows of wounded men. Some watched in silence, unsure what to make of an American sergeant carrying a Japanese woman in both arms. Daniel laid her on a cot, but kept a hand braced near her knees so they wouldn't fall abruptly. Her legs were still half open, frozen by hours of strain. The medics glanced at her posture, then at Daniel, but said nothing. They had seen worse. Doc Harrison approached, rolling up his sleeves. "Easy, Sergeant. We'll take it from here." Daniel hesitated. Aiko's fingers tightened around his sleeve. He froze. She didn't speak, but her eyes held him, terrified he would leave, terrified of being surrounded by strangers in a foreign uniform. Daniel sat beside her cot, anchoring himself so she could see him. "I'm staying," he said softly. "I'm right here." Aiko released a shaky breath. Doc Harrison checked her pulse, her breathing, the bruises on her thighs. "These muscles are in shock," the doctor murmured. "She'll close her legs again once they relax. Her body's still stuck in the fear." Daniel nodded quietly. He understood more than most men would. He still felt the imprint of her trembling muscles against his palms. As the doctor worked, Aiko's eyes kept drifting back to Daniel as if she needed to confirm, again and again, that the man who held her through life and death had not disappeared. Adams appeared in the doorway, helmet tucked under his arm. How is she?" "She's alive," Daniel said. Adams smiled awkwardly, relief softening his face. Good. I'm glad." Boone clapped the kid's shoulder and pulled him back outside to give space. The tent quieted. Aiko lay still, breaths finally slowing into something steadier. Her hands, small, dirt-stained, rested atop the blanket. She stared upward, blinking as if trying to process the last hour of her life. Daniel leaned closer. "Aiko, do you need water?" She gently shook her head. Then her lips parted. At first, nothing came out, just air. Then a faint whisper formed, clumsy but deliberate. "Sevens, thank you." Daniel blinked. It wasn't the language that stunned him, it was the emotion behind it. Aiko swallowed and tried again, pushing the English word up from somewhere fragile. The "Thank you for seeing me." Her voice cracked. She closed her eyes, tears slipping sideways. As human. The canvas walls seemed to contract around Daniel's chest. No praise in his life, no medal, no commendation, no battlefield victory had ever hit him like those 3 quiet words. He leaned forward, voice low and steadier than he felt. "You are human, Aiko," he said. "That's why we saved you. That's all that matters." Her breath trembled, but it was a different kind of trembling now. Not fear, not panic. Relief, recognition, humanity restored. Doc Harrison placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. She'll recover. With rest. Daniel nodded, rising slowly. But as he tried to step back, Aiko reached out, weak fingers brushing his wrist. He paused. She didn't cling. She just needed to know he hadn't gone far. Daniel sat again. "I'll stay until you fall asleep," he murmured. Aiko closed her eyes at last, and for the first time since the barn, her legs loosened by a fraction, settling closer together. A sign of trust deeper than words. For the next 3 nights, Daniel Hayes did not sleep. Not fully. Not peacefully. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the barn again. The straw. The wire. Aiko's shaking legs held open by fear and exhaustion. The moment he pressed his hands against her thighs to keep her alive, the sound of the wire snapping still echoed at the edges of his dreams. His bunkmates noticed. Boone nudged him on night 2. "You gonna sleep, or just stare at the ceiling till sunrise?" Daniel didn't answer. Adams approached from the other side of the barracks. "You thinking about her again, Sarge?" Daniel sighed. "I'm thinking about how close she came." Adams nodded softly. "She's still alive because you didn't freeze." Daniel didn't respond, but the words helped. A little. Aiko recovered slowly. Her muscles relaxed bit by bit until she could lower her knees, then draw her legs together without pain. Doc Harrison made her walk circles around the tent floor, small steps at first, then larger ones. Each day she grew stronger, though the memory stayed in her eyes. The memory of not being able to move, not being able to choose, not being sure she would live. But whenever she saw Daniel through the canvas flap, something eased in her expression, as if the sight of him reassured her the ground wouldn't open beneath her feet. On the morning of the 4th day, Daniel stepped into the tent with a metal cup of warm tea. Aiko was sitting upright on her cot, back straight, hair brushed at last. When she saw him, she smiled small, shy, but real. "Daniel," she said carefully. He blinked. "You learned my name." She nodded proudly. "I try." He handed her the cup. She accepted it with both hands, a gesture of respect in her culture, and drank slowly. The silence between them was not awkward. It was the kind of silence formed between two people who had already shared too much danger to pretend they were strangers. Aiko took a breath and said, halting but determined, "I remember. You say, stay with me." Daniel's jaw tightened. The words had come out of him instinctively in the barn, but hearing them back now felt heavier. Aiko placed her hand over her chest. "Your voice helped. My legs. They listened to your voice, not fear." Daniel exhaled slowly. "That wasn't bravery, Aiko. That was desperation." She shook her head gently. "No. You see me." The same words she whispered on that cot echoed again, clearer now, stronger. "You see me." Daniel swallowed. "And we weren't going to let you die." Aiko bowed her head, gratitude written across every line of her face. By the end of the week, orders came. POWs were being transported to a larger holding area inland. Aiko would travel with them safer, cleaner, with real medical facilities. Daniel walked her to the transport truck. She climbed onto the wooden step, then hesitated and looked back at him, eyes full of something he couldn't name but felt deep in his chest. She bowed once. Slow. Deep. A gesture she would not give to just anyone. "Thank you. Sergeant Hayes." Her English was clear. "Steady." Daniel nodded. "Stay safe, Aiko." She placed her hand lightly over her heart, the same place where she felt his voice in the barn, and then took her seat among the other civilians. The engine rumbled. Dust rose. The truck pulled away. Daniel watched until the last corner of canvas disappeared behind the ridge. But one thing stayed with him. The memory of a frightened young woman whispering a sentence he knew he would carry for the rest of his life. "Thank you for seeing me as human."